Welcome everyone to our episode number 90 of 2023. And to begin with this episode, I have one of my favorite guests, Luci Gabel. We are going to talk in this time leadership in 2023. And to start with this broad topic, I would like to ask Luci, what do you think about the definition of leadership that we can have right now? Or what have you envisioned in the projects, in the talks, in the conferences that you have had with leadership people?
Oh, that's a great question. And it's a big one. So, David, I'll try to make it short.
Okay.
What is leadership, right? What is it now? Why is it different? And just to make it really short is that I think the best answer is that leadership is being someone that others want to follow. And that is different from what many leaders are today.
Exactly. I think that, just in the previous years, leadership meant just a hierarchy of having someone on the top and giving you instructions or orders, or many times just yelling at you. And that was leadership. That was doing their job. That was trying to help employees, which for me, I think that was not a concept that many people was comfortable with. And of course that you just started to develop a concept of a number for many of the employees, no? And that's the concept that I think that has to change. And enterprises, companies, and all of these people that have someone under their charge, they have to start looking to a much more broad concept of how to treat employees. Now more than ever, that in the US there was a big movement about quitting jobs because people were worried about their health. No?
Well, I'm going to clarify in the beginning, you said people are being looked at like a number.
Yeah.
And that was accepted for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I don't think people ever liked that.
No.
But now, to come back around to where you are now, speaking about people leaving their jobs, well, now people are speaking out. They're speaking loudly about what they want. They have a voice. They have power, more power than ever before. And I want to step back a little bit, though. This is a problem. This is how it's been through a history of mankind since we became civilizations, I would say. Yes. Right? Because we had, at some point, someone was the ruler of the community. And then we got kingdoms. And within that, even as we branched out to being people who were farming, we had serfs, and we had people living under someone else's control. So we've had this forever. Think about how the pyramids were made, how all the other constructs, big giant structures in history were made. There was someone that was leading slaves. We're most likely gathering from how that was done. This was a leader and slaves. And then we have a leader and some other kind of indentured servants, and then leaders and their kingdom, leaders and in the industrial age, people working in a factory. Mm-hmm. So nobody liked that. And we're at a different time now, right? And people don't want to follow that kind of a leader anymore. So leadership is changing now. It is going to change no matter what. And in my opinion,
Mhm.
Those who continue to lead into the future, they're going to be the ones doing things differently. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, doing things differently, and also trying to integrate the concept that to be a leader, you need a team. You need a group of people that you can also have different skills, different kind of thinking, so that you complement the way you think and the way you want to do the strategies, the projects, anything that you want to unfold in your company needs the help of people. And anyone that has a leadership position, it is given because of the people that they are being followed by. No?
Right. And if one has a leadership position, that doesn't mean that people are necessarily following them, right? Because one can be in a role and have a title, but not be able to lead people. That doesn't mean that naturally people are going to want to follow. And when that happens, we have a lot of distress in the job. The people working have a lot of stress, and so does the leader.
Yeah. I was listening to one of the very good strategists that is Jocko Wilkins, and he was speaking about the military and the groups and the leadership in the military. And he gave a very good explanation of how a leader is someone that is also doing the things with the group and trying to ask for a commentary, an opinion, a new way of doing the things, not just imposing their way and not just giving orders. It is more like a kind of a friendship, if you want to see it like that, because you have to get also to the level of the people that you are leading, so that you expand the wisdom that you can have in terms of implementing a new project or just changing the way things are. Because nowadays the way people are working has changed, and it won't go back. So we are going to evolve into that new model, but it is not going back. So
It's
that's
time.
no.
Yes. And I like what you brought out about how leaders got to be in with the people. And this is one of the things I find myself working with my clients a lot on right now, is because one thing I think that is super scary for people transitioning into this new way of leadership is that the loss of control, basically. Loss
Okay.
of control. And there's a misperception, though, that the leader is supposed to have all the control and all the answers. And right there in itself is a lot of pressure. So much pressure, more than most humans are supposed to be bearing. You know, there's no one person that can know all the answers. And especially in today's technology,
Yeah.
we know we can't know all the answers, right? With today's technology. So the best way to be a leader right now, as we're moving forward, is to be someone who can bring all of the people on the team and all of that knowledge and wisdom and experience together and make that one giant concept of knowledge, you know,
Yeah.
and
I
not to have people expect the leader to always be right, never make mistakes, always know what they're doing, because that puts the leader in a really hard place. It's an impossible human place. And it also makes it terrible for when a mistake is made.
exactly, because it's all a responsibility in just one individual. When in fact, when someone fails, well, talking about an organization, it fails because the different parts of the group or the team didn't make something happened, or there was some missing piece in the puzzle, no? And I think that also, now that you are bringing this kind of concept into the table of leadership, we can also talk about being a conscious person that has more thought into their head of how to implement this new way of working and lose some of the control aspects, no?
Yeah. Conscious and changing one's mindset. Because another side of what we just talked about, giving up control, allowing other people to participate and help make decisions, use the collective knowledge and intelligence. There's another side to that, which is that you don't have to be perfect. And you have so many more inputs and so much more collective knowledge that you're supported in many, many ways. You're not alone, which unfortunately, that's what leadership has been in the past, is all by oneself. And at the same time, from someone else's perspective, from your team's perspective, that they like people like that. You get more respect, you get more people liking you. You can have respect and be liked, because people like other people that are human, that they can relate to, that they feel comfortable with and close to. And you don't have to, be a goof or a clown, to make people like you. You don't have to be someone else than who you already are. But what we know people like and appreciate is someone who's authentic, someone who has integrity, who says and acts in synchrony, someone who communicates well. And that means they're transparent, they don't hold things back and try to pretend, like everything's fine when it's not. But they can also communicate well. They also know how to talk so that they get their point across. It comes across clearly, it's understood, they don't talk too much, they don't talk too little,
Yeah.
So we can gain the skills. All these things are human skills. It just takes some practice and time to get good at it. And we're always getting better at things like this over time.
Yeah, because one of the pieces of being a leader is that people, as you mentioned, like you and also trust you. And trust is something that is going to be gained or earned because you have this transparency, because you are able to say, you know what, this is not a good day for me. If you can have this meeting and if you can be in charge of this meeting, I would really appreciate, because I have problems in my house, and just lead the meeting to some people, sharing that part of the control, sharing that part of the leadership position to the other people that are also going to make them feel appreciated and capable of doing the same things, which is just scaling up the leadership into a very nice, compassionate chain of command, let's say.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And again, it works on both sides. It works for the side of the leader when they can delegate or allow others to have part of the control within reason, obviously, because sometimes it all falls back on that one person. But there's a lot of control one can give up and give out before it becomes, scary per se. And other people that work, people on the teams, they like to have some control too. They like to have some authority. They like to have some say in how things go for them in their work life. And they also like to know that they're making a difference and that they're contributing to what's going on. It makes people happy. It keeps them satisfied with their work. It helps them to be engaged, and all that affects their entire life and even their health.
Yeah, I was just remembering a part of my life where I work in the clinical trials, and I was on the site of the hospitals where they were taking patients, and I was with the physicians, with the doctors, and I was watching all the movement, all of the things that were happening, and that was very rewarding for me because I was seeing that my job was impacting the lives of many of those people that were involved in the trial as patients, the doctors, the whole team, how they work. And that was, I think, the most rewarding experience. And sharing that time with people, with all of the group, that was more than the payment, no, I can say.
Right. I know. Just knowing that you're having a positive effect on other people's lives, that you're part of that whole symphony is
Yeah.
really a lovely thing to feel, isn't it?
It is, and as you mentioned, losing that part of control of, or also trusting people that they can work on projects and assignations more than time, that they are constricted in time, no? Because nowadays, as the hybrid model is changing, people have more freedom to either work right at the beginning of the day more if they are not in a meeting or something like that, in what they have to do in the assignments, or in the middle of the day or at night. They have more freedom in terms of adjusting the time when they are doing the things, if the leadership trust into that kind of formula that is going to give the people back their lives, and knowing and adjusting by themselves, becoming more independent in that way to deliver the things that they have to. No?
Mm-hmm. So you're talking about people's daily rhythms and how different people work better at different times.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
also very, very important. That now is finally probably a good starting point to allow people to have a much um, balanced way of having work, life, and other things. No?
Work-life balance. I know. And I think that's going to come back all the way to what we started talking about, that it requires a leader to let go of the kind of control that they think they need, because I don't think they ever needed it. Back to being a leader that people want to follow. You don't have to crack a whip. You don't have to threaten or chain people to their desks if you're basing their jobs on results
Mhm.
and what they need to get done. And when they do it is up to them. Do they have to come into an office? Do they actually have to get their work done? If not, you don't need to check in on them all the time. You just know if they're getting their work done or not, right? It's not about sitting at a desk. It never should be, I don't think. I mean, unless you're an IT person fixing a computer, that's when you need to be there at that desk. And there are other people who are hands-on putting things together. Of course, they need to be there because they need to be working on a specific item in a specific area. And we're right now at this point where we can develop some flux and flexibility in people's jobs so they have that work-life balance. And I think it's very doable. It just requires open minds and a growth mindset.
Yes, and also I think that now that you're mentioning the parts of the of the chain of things that are going to happen, people and leadership also needs to realize that training an employee investing time in those first moments that an employee goes into the new organization for him or her is very important in order to set boundaries, in order to set time, in order to set priorities, and all of the things that this person needs to handle. Because I have seen a lot of examples where many of the mistakes are committed just because there was no time to invest in the training program, no?
Yeah.
And they want to skip that because they are in an urgent timing to do the things, and they just drop the employee and, well, you are going to learn on the way and you're going to do the things that you have to, and that's it, and just read these SOPs and do those trainings, and that's it. And that was my process to start in many of the companies. And I was just like bored about the SOPs because they are boring, and the trainings are very, very boring also. And I never had contact with a leader that really just have a mentorship, no, of how the things were going to go and what was my responsibilities even.
Mentorship. Oh, so important. And there needs to be some time that allows for that ramp up. And without it, how many hours of work is that employee putting in that are unnecessary, just trying to find things out?
Yeah.
And someone on LinkedIn mentioned something, the onboarding experience, where it's more of an experience, or it could be more of an experience than being sent home with the stack of papers to read. Because honestly, who reads those really? Who sits down and actually reads all of those, right? So it could be an experiential process, which I actually had a benefit of having something like that at one time when I was starting to work at the Dragon Hill Lodge in Seoul, South Korea. I started to work, that was a Department of Defense position. And there was a whole orientation process that took days, but it was very interactive. I went to, half a day when everybody went in to see a movie. We got introduced to the ways of Asian culture. We got introduced to the culture of the Department of Defense. We got introduced to how, the different acronyms and what things mean and how things work for the military. And I can't remember not liking it. It was very engaging. There was a lot of different multimedia. Sometimes people got up and talked. Sometimes we had teams talking together. We broke out into groups. And that was the first probably week of my employment. And I got to meet then all the people up the chain. They all introduced themselves to us. I mean, it was just an event,
Yeah.
And I think that's a lovely way of doing things.
Yes, I mean, I think that if many companies could do that, could invest 1 week or 2 days or 3 days, I don't know, they can packet it in, but having that experience in reality, in physicality, let's say, that is much better than just being in a screen, reading what you should do and trying to imagine the things, because of course it's all abstract and you don't even know what is certain kind of acronym or what does it mean in the field, no? And those kind of things are just leading to mistakes that probably they are just going to grow into the snowball effect. No?
Disney has Disney University, and McDonald's has, I forgot the name, but it's something university. I think it's McDonald's University. I don't remember the exact name, but these are two big companies that have been around for a long time that are known for a specific product that is replicable over years. People know when they go to Disney or when they go to McDonald's, they're going to get a certain thing that's like the same experience all the time. And how do you do that? You have people understand the culture and the experience and what the company is all about. So both of these companies, and I'm sure there are more, but they have a university where people go to learn. I'm not sure how long it is, but I'm just saying they have decided that it's worth investing that. So it should be something that other companies seriously consider.
Can you imagine in this 2023 and for the years that will come into this new phase that we are experiencing, that these leaders could listen to our conversation and start designing this new experience, not probably a university, but probably a program for employees to have now an adaptation to the hybrid model, an adaptation to the way our body works, and to understand what is your rhythm of working, and trying to teach them. Of course, that is not going to be something that they can decide for them, but they are going to identify what would be better for me to work in the morning early, to work at the middle of the day, to have this kind of in-between breaks that you can give yourself to probably exercise. Why not? No?
To design a completely different work culture.
Mm-hmm.
That's the opportunity right here. It's not something that should be looked at as negative. It's a huge gift that will make a difference for so many people's lives, including the leaders that start this change. So yeah, I feel that that would be very exciting and everyone should consider it.
It would be a dream come true. It would be a life where you can have meaning, where you can have work, when you can have interaction with your family or your friends, where you can have pretty much everything that you can almost pack into the days, and having more long-term people, because that is also one of the problems right now, that many of the new generations, of course, that they are going to see a job opportunity just as a passing moment that they are going to have, and just focus on the money that they are going to get from the company, and that's it. This is just a springboard for them. No, they are just going to go from one company to the next one. But what if we can manage to do a long-term position for them in terms of adjusting the schedules, the time, the activities, and also the rewards that they are going to observe, no?
Well, I love that. I agree. And I think that it requires that companies get out of that mindset that you first talked about, that people are numbers.
Yeah.
And here's, to speak to that, because there are a lot of numbers counters that are evaluating jobs and businesses, to speak to that numbers point, that return on investment is a big deal. And if one would start to get into the cost of hiring an employee, training an employee, the lost hours on employees starting what we talked about earlier, the lost hours of managers training, and even their peers training them up, and then the employee leaves. So that happening over and over again is a high cost, just that people haven't been putting numbers on it. And I think I'm going to move into also the hiring process that's become pervasive in America right now. And that is where people put their long worked on resumes into a filtration system, which is a computer, and it may come out the other side into being looked at by a human. And most of the humans have a very low level idea about what the job really entails. So the wall that people need to break through, really good people aren't getting jobs because of this stoppage point which is the recruiting process for America right now. And I think that's causing part of our economic issues, but I also think that companies are going to be feeling this effect, if they're not already, the effect of not getting the right people in the door and having them then trained up the right way is the next part.
Which is something that also can be included in the program that we were speaking of training an employee that is just new. Why not giving the people that is hiring the level of vision, the level of experience also for the job that they are hiring? Because as you mentioned, they don't even know what these people are going to do. That's why they just filter resumes and take out people that are very valuable just because they didn't have a checklist comply with. And
Keywords, yep, check the boxes.
so that is a lot of people wasted, sort of saying, because they didn't have the visibility of knowing more about the position. No?
Yeah. So that I feel is another side of business that needs to be looked at and addressed in terms of money lost in people that you might not have to spend time training because they might already have the experience, but it might be experience in, one different kind of engineering, but they can surely transfer it over to this other kind of engineering. But the computers and the people doing the initial onboarding or hiring don't understand that. And so they get passed over. Yeah, it's a big waste of resources, I think, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that in that same structure or in that same way of linking the things, many of the different positions that a company can have, they should be really envisioned in terms of having boundaries. So this is the level where you have to work, and this is the level where you finish, because many people end up doing the job of the people that is right below them, because these people doesn't know how to do the job. They didn't invest in that time, in that training. So now the boss or the one that is above has to do the job of this person or train that person, invest the time in training that person to do something that from the start they could have saved. And many times these kind of conflicts end up in years passing, and just because the velocity, the speed of productivity needs to continue and the return of investment needs to grow, they don't have time to see that. And that's like I think that, I don't know how to call it, like having blinders here.
Yeah. Yeah. There's also a phrase about saving. Oh, now I'm going to embarrass myself, but it's about, saving a penny and losing a dollar, saved a penny here, but over there you didn't realize your dollar flew out the window,
And saying $1, but it is more than that, of course.
Oh, of course. But 100 times what you think you're saving is going out the window,
Exactly.
So we have to turn this back to leadership, because there are so many holes we can plug, you and I together, about how businesses can do things differently for the better of the company and the return on investment and the people side. And the only way that's really going to change is through leadership. And it takes someone who's going to be bold and who's going to be daring enough to be different from everybody else. And that's another piece that I work with clients on a lot, because there's fear. It's another fear factor. No one else is doing this. Is this actually going to work? But that is what leadership is. Leadership is doing things that haven't been done before. When we think about all the leaders in history, why do we remember them? Why did they lead the world or their companies to the next level? Because it hadn't been done before. Someone had to be bold enough and daring enough to do things differently.
They didn't care about making a mistake, no? Well, in terms of the expectations or in terms of the opinion of other people. So they were just very right in their mindset about doing an idea, implementing something like Steve Jobs, for example, I can think of, that he had an idea, a vision of designing a product that is appealing to the people, and he didn't even care how it looked in the outside. He also cared about how it looks in the inside part and how he assembles the pieces of the computers and the phones and everything. So he just transmitted that vision to the people and just convinced them that this was the way to think different, no?
I agree that is one way. We don't know whether all of the leaders didn't care, right? Maybe a bunch of them actually did care about what people thought, because we even just talked about how a leader has to be someone that others want to follow. And honestly, I feel that in Steve Jobs, with Steve Jobs, we know that he was actually not the most wonderful person to work for. And he was determined to get done what he needed to do in the way that he wanted to do it. So I'm going to flip the coin on that and say, yes, he was determined. Yes, he was bold. Yes, he did things differently. And he wasn't really the ideal leader that we're talking about today.
No.
Because people don't want to follow that kind of person anymore, especially when they start to think about the longevity of their lives, what's important to them, priorities, and feeling good about themselves, which a lot of people are doing right now.
And I can also reflect on that, because he was one person at the beginning and he created a fame and a reputation of the things that he did. But through the passing of time and with the disease that he had, of course, he kind of reflected that he was not the best leader. He knew it.
He ultimately did say that. Mm-hmm.
He knew that he didn't have a way to communicate with people sometimes, and he had a very explosive way of reacting towards a mistake or towards something that he didn't like. So that's also the part of being a leader and admitting that you can have mistakes, that you are human and you can commit this kind of sometimes atrocities in the way you are trying to direct people, no?
Well, I think, and I am not an expert on Steve Jobs at all, but I do think that he gained more respect from people in the end when he did show his softer side, and when he did say, gosh, there were things I wish I did differently. And I think we need to think about that too, because there is still a misconception. There's a big misconception in a large part of the world that is what leadership is supposed to be. Perfect. Leadership is supposed to be impenetrable and always right and strong and egotistical. You see someone standing with a stake in the ground, and shining armor, that's leadership. It was leadership then, and it's not leadership now. So this is the way we're changing.
Mm-hmm. And as we mentioned also at the beginning, it's a way to let yourself be who you are, be transparent with your emotions, be transparent with the things that you want to create, and allow this brainstorm of sharing and gaining the trust of people, of your team, so that they open up also about what they expect of the job. No, how many times I don't think I was ever asked, what do you expect from this job?
Wow.
And this is a question that should be asked in the interview.
What do you not only expect, but what do you want? What do you want to get out of this job? What interests you here? What's going to motivate you to work? I think every leader needs to ask that of their team, because the only way we can be someone that others want to follow is if we show them something in their future that they want, or somewhere they want to be, so that, and we can all work together to get to that place. Ultimately, when you think of leadership, any kind of leadership, that's what it is. The ability to share with people your vision, but also how their vision fits in and how they can get motivated, how it will help their lives, and how it serves their values to work together as a team.
And also recognizing that we are living in a new season, let's call it like that, in a new season where people can have the freedom of speaking out and saying, well, you know what, you are going to hire me, but in reality, or being completely transparent, I just want to have this job for 5 years because I have other things in my mind. I already know my pathway. I already know what I want to do in the future 10 years or 20 years. And I just want this job for 5 years. Imagine if people could hire them for those 5 years and then allow them to mentor the one that is going to replace them, so that they can have all of that wisdom and all of that training and all of that leadership that probably they are going to develop into the other person, and having that freedom of exchanging, sort of saying, the human resources, no?
So they have an exit strategy, some of these people.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like just being a business owner. When you get into business, the recommendation is that you know how you're going to get out of it in a good way, and that's an interesting way of looking at your career as well. How are you going to get out of it in a good way, even if it's 5 years at a job? What do you want from it? And would you be able to explain that to your leader and have them help you to get there? And I love the next piece that you mentioned, which is, of course, having you or them planning their exit so that the next person coming in can have a good entry. The great cycle.
It would be a cycle where it's a realistic cycle, because nowadays I think that also new generations cannot have the concept, probably not all, of course we cannot generalize for everyone, but most of the new generations don't have the idea of being in the same job for 20 or 30 years. So they don't have that capacity now to think in the future like a very constant way of being, no? And they want to do a lot of things. They want to try other things, no?
So do we, David. You and I are like that, I think.
Yes.
That's
Yeah,
why we have our own businesses. The
exactly.
freedom to shift and try different things. And I think everyone should have that if they want it. It's exciting. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it. In fact, I think that the best leaders and ultimately the businesses that stay on top are those that accept reality and then work with that and how to make it best. So you just talked about what is reality right now. People aren't staying with their job for 20 or 30 years. So how do we work with that reality to make it work for everyone rather than ignoring it, pretending it's not there, trying to push it down. All of that only stalls what's coming up inevitably, and also makes things worse for everybody trying to pretend something's not happening.
Yes, because
Not feeling it.
you stay in the old model and you commit the same mistakes in terms of thinking that people are the same. And to begin with, they are not the same. They also want their own leadership position in their lives. They want to be leaders of their lives. They want to know what is going to happen. And that is a very strong shake for the mindset of many, I don't know, CEOs, that they don't want to see, and they don't want to accept that the world is changing, you know?
And that's just really for all of our sakes. When you mentioned self-leadership, one of the worst things we can ever do in leading our own lives or anything else is ignoring what's happening.
Because we don't learn from our mistakes.
Well,
Because
we also, it's like standing there, when a volcano is coming and you're pretending it's not there. What's going to happen? You're going to be covered. You're going to be burned. It's not going to be good eventually.
Yeah, exactly. You have to do something. You have to be able to react or respond in a way that can give you leverage. No?
Right. And the faster we accept what's real and deal with reality, the more we springboard off into a better place. What's better and what's next?
What's
But
better?
then there's fear. But then there's fear, which we know humans are naturally averse to change, naturally averse to things not being the same. I guess I'm just repeating myself, but yeah, so there's fear about that. But if we face what's really happening and we make a decision about what we want to do with it, then we actually do have some control. Otherwise, we're actually not in control.
Yes. And what do you think about, I also heard that concept now in several podcasts that I listen to, about the concept of tribes that is coming very strong, forming different groups of people, communities, that they are creating the new model of businesses. They are getting together, they have their own business, but they are complementing each other, and they are creating communities, just like very, very back in the past.
Long ago, where I haven't actually been listening into much of that, but I understand how it could work. Yeah.
Because I think that that model is the one that has many of the things that we were mentioning, because the leaders of these community groups or new tribes that they are generating, they have a very clear mindset that people are going to stay in this community or in this business like for a while. They don't have an obligation. They don't have a mandatory schedule to follow or things, but they have a contribution to make. And they have the contribution to make grow the community, to make expand the concept. And now is liking or getting people on board because of their values, not because of the resume.
Well, so much there. I'm just going to step into what you last said, getting people on board because of values. And I think that's a really important concept, because back to what I had mentioned earlier, when you can help people to see how what you're doing is affecting what they care about, is when that your directions are on the same path, that's going to create a strong bond between you and the people you're working with. So similar values, similar wishes for what to see in the world, similar hopes and dreams. All that is really strong glue that holds people together. And we can see that in good ways and bad ways playing out right now.
Yeah. Yes, of course. There is always good sides and bad sides, let's say.
Right.
And I think that we can wrap up probably this leadership of 2023 with the concept of freedom, no? Freedom of choosing what is going to work for you, what is going to work for the company, what is going to work for the future employee, and what is going to work for the puzzle that you are assembling.
Yeah, and how it's very possible to lead people and still give them freedom of choice and freedom of movement, freedom of time.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes things better for them, which ultimately makes things better for you. Comes back around.
Because they are going to give you their best, because you are letting them have their life.
And then there's like, respect, and trust that comes with that.
Yes, which is the three values that I think are very, very important to be a leader, no?
Liked, respected, and trusted.
Like, respected, and trusted. We could just live with that.
Yeah, there are so many, but I think that those are very good. Those are broad and the best qualities I think you can have with the leader.
So what would you tell the listeners to just reflect so that they can have a new way of seeing leadership?
Well, I guess we're speaking to people who are in leadership. Is that what you're saying? How would they see leadership differently? What would I leave them with? I would say that be your best self at all times. Be your best self at all times, because we all, I think all of us, deep down, we want the best for ourselves, and we want the best for everyone else. We want the best for the world that we live in. And we know what's right and what's wrong. So if we start from there and go and lean into that, that's a good place to start.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more that that is one of the best mantras that they can have. Be your best self, and asking that question when you are in those conflicting moments also is really important, because you are going to have a much better decision, you know?
Right. And sometimes that requires being brave. That's true. So if you feel like you're in a hard spot and you're trying to be your best self and it's scary, that's what happens. That is how it is. And you're on the right path.
Yeah. Thank you, Lucy, for having this powerful conversation. And now that we are beginning the year, it's a very good timing for people to think about that and to reflect on this new envisioned world that we are going to have. So thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you for connecting again in this space. And we will listen and watch each other on our next time. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, David.